Welcome to Hierasmus and Friends, Stories Behind the Science, hosted by Hierasmus, the leading clinical platform for ABA therapy. Each episode highlights inspiring stories from experts and individuals with unique perspectives. Join us as we explore valuable insights and foster empowerment within the autism community. Welcome back to Different Career Paths, our mini-series highlighting the many ways professionals build meaningful careers in the ABA field. Today, I'm joined by Alecia, founder of the Barrett Academy, along with lead RBTs Adrianna and Amy, who are currently completing their supervision hours as they prepare for the BCBA exam. We'll explore the story behind this bootstrapped organization, what makes their mission and training model unique, and how they stay grounded in serving the child in front of them. So thank you all for being here so much today. How's everyone doing?
Good. Thanks for
Good.
having us.
Good. Okay. Well, we're going to start having each of you just share your full name, your location, and current job title. And if you also want to share a fun fact about yourself, and we'll start out with Alecia.
Hi, I'm Alecia. Alecia Barrett, owner of A Barrett Academy. We are located in Toledo, Ohio, and we serve all ages with a very naturalistic approach. And this has been a fun journey. A fun fact about me: I like to run and knit. Although being a business owner, that has kind of taken a backseat. So.
Okay. So I'm curious, Alecia. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio. Are you from Toledo or?
No, I was
No.
born in Ohio, raised in Michigan, and then came down for my undergrad in Bowling Green.
Yes. Great
So
school.
yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Amy, if you want to do a little brief introduction.
I am Amy Robertson. I live in Bowling Green, Ohio, but I
Okay.
work here in Toledo with Alecia. And a fun fact about me is I am from Pennsylvania, not
Okay.
originally from Ohio.
Awesome. And last but not least, Adriana.
Hello, my name's Adrianna McAllister. I live in Michigan, but I work in Ohio. I'm a lead RBT, and a fun fact about me is that I collect fossils, shells, and rocks, and I'm a huge fan of classic 1990s monster movies.
Very cool. I like it. Well, I've got some random shell fossils. I'm in north of Dallas that have sh we kind of
Ooh.
live on an acreage that have shown up in our yard, and I'm like, this is weird. So maybe I'll send you some pictures, and you can
Yeah.
tell me how they ended up in Texas. Uh, Okay, well, we want to hear more about kind of the story behind Barrett Academy. And so we're going to focus on Alecia for a little bit. So if you don't mind just kind of sharing how did it start? What inspired you to start your business?
Yeah, so a lot of things inspired me, but I kind of as I was reflecting, I reflected back to, I noticed a service gap in our area for families who had significant behavioral difficulties. And they were having a really hard time finding providers that really got down in the nitty gritty, met them where they were at, and was individualized in their process of care. So that really was like the backbone of inspiration. Um, uh, but on top of that, I also, being in the field for a significant period of time, um, did not like seeing how the workforce was being treated by company owners or corporate locations. And so, on top of the client, very specific client engagement and that inspiration, it's also, I have a very big focus on staff care and staff training and staff support.
I love that. And what year did you start your business?
I started in 2023, actually. So
Okay.
we're still baby.
You've
Yeah,
done a lot in a short amount of time, though. That is impressive.
yes.
I didn't realize it was just 2023. So,
Yeah.
in the early days, which weren't that long ago, what were some of the challenges that you faced building this bootstrapped organization?
Yeah, so challenges. Um, I think the biggest challenge was finding that balance between spending my time doing the things and also the financial
Hmm.
balance. Um, Before staff, right? It was for a while, it was just me doing the things. I didn't have any employees, and then eventually I was able to expand from there. But on the business side, it was credentialing.
Okay.
Credentialing was a big hiccup, and it took a really long time, and it was not an easy, fun process. So that was the biggest challenge, I think, overall.
Okay. So in this, there might be some overlap because challenges often correlate with lessons. But what would you
Yeah.
say what's one lesson you learned early on that still shapes Barrett Academy today?
Yeah, so I wouldn't say in this case that there's an overlap, which may
Okay.
be a good thing.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there's still insurance issues and things they got to work through and frustrations there. But really, as a leader, as a professional, I've always had difficulty in not liking conflict. And so that definitely it has shaped how I run the company, and that I look to hire staff that are open to learning and open and willing to take feedback. And then once they're part of the team, I then have ongoing quick sessions of feedback, whether that's on the floor or one on one. And so then it becomes just like a thread within the clinic or within the team that, like, if you're getting corrected, it's not a bad thing. You're growing your skill, right? And it doesn't feel so conflicting and ouchy. Yeah.
Absolutely. That is awesome. Okay, well, I want to kind of move on a little bit to talk with Adriana and Amy, and just to give you guys a little backstory of our mini series. I guess I should have started this for any listeners that haven't heard the previous two episodes. We did talk with a company that helps BCBAs start with startups, so very small, like basically starting with just one BCBA at that point. And then we also talked to like an enterprise size ABA organization. And now we're talking with Barrett Academy, which is a smaller, I would say, to mid-size org, and kind of seeing just the pros and cons of what it's like for a BCBA to work in those different settings, as well as RBTs that are growing to become BCBAs. So I want to turn and talk about what led you both to become RBTs and pursue your supervision hours towards sitting for the BCBA exam. And I'm curious if this journey started before or after Barrett Academy. So, Amy, you want to kind of tell us what led you to become an RBT and then decide to go further from there?
So I started working with the autism community when I was 14, volunteering at a summer camp for individuals with disabilities. And then I have my undergrad in speech and audio,
Okay.
but from that point, I had to get my master's in that, and I didn't really want to. So I promised myself it would take 5 years to figure out what I needed to do, and then I had to go back to grad school for something.
Hmm.
So before I moved to Ohio, I was shortly working at a small ABA clinic, and that kind of got my interest peaked. And then when I moved here, I was working at an autism school, and this was before I had my daughter. So then there was a big break of doing none of it. Um, but while I was working at that autism school, Alecia started coming in to offer supports there. And I was like, I think I kind of like this. So then I
Hmm.
applied to the master's program at Bowling Green State University. And when Alecia opened up her business to being more than just her, I was like, hey, pick me. And now I'm here.
I love it. Awesome. Adriana, you want to share?
Um, so, um, autism spectrum disorder has definitely touched my life, through family relationships, social relationships. Um, but, once got to see the population, I just knew that that was the population for me. And then, I have passed with Alecia. So me meeting Alecia at a previous location and working under her is what created that fire in me that this is what I want and this is what I'm going to go for. And I absolutely just the way that she teaches, the way that she meets these kids where they're at is exactly what I want to do. I'm all about that. And she definitely pushed me to go back to school. And I kept dragging my feet. But I did eventually go. And that was when we kind of parted ways because I had to kind of, make my life fit for what I needed to do school and work. But I found my way back to Alecia, and I am exorbitantly happy, and I am so excited to have finished my hours with her, and move on to that next step.
Awesome. If you guys want to share a little bit, we know in the ABA world, there is a shortage of RBTs and BCBAs, and there are many options for you all to choose from. So, kind of what guided you in choosing Barrett Academy for your supervision journey, and kind of share what your experience has been like being part of this organization. And Amy, you can go first.
Um, well, I chose Alecia because, like Adriana said, I was working under her at another location where I got to learn from her and see how she interacted with the kids and her supervisees. And because I was new to the area, new to the state, I was like, well, I don't think I really want to look anywhere else. I like it. I like this. I like her. And so that is definitely what made me want to work underneath her. And she feels less like a boss sometimes and more like a mentor, a helper. I don't feel uncomfortable going to her and asking her a question. She doesn't ever make me feel like I have a stupid question. She really works through everything at whatever pace, whatever verbiage she needs to use to help you understand something. And I really appreciate that in um, a supervisor.
Awesome.
So for my supervision hours, I collected hours at three different locations.
Oh,
So
okay.
I started at one location that seemed to be similar to the same kind of natural environment teaching and things like that Alecia had. And so I went there and, I really struggled to get enough supervision. I really didn't have a lot of support. And that is what led me to then go look somewhere else. And I picked a more corporate ABA location. Then I was getting tons of supervision, but I couldn't get the unrestricted hours. And so that was when I started kind of looking because I was like, I'm not going to finish these hours before my degree. So then I reached out to Alecia, and she was able to provide, much more quality support as well as quality hours. And so that was when I made the choice to come back to her and finish my hours here. And since transitioning to the clinic, I feel like I've, regained that balance in my life and the burnout and stuff like that had come from other locations. So supervision hours here felt much, much more natural than my previous experiences.
I love that you brought up those unrestricted hours because that can be a hot topic and those can be the most challenging to get. So, kind of before I move on to another question, I want to just get a better idea of what supervision looks like at Barrett Academy. Do you guys do group supervision at all, or is it all individual? What do, the unrestricted look like? So, Alecia, I don't know if you want to answer this or if you want them to, but I just want to get a better idea of what it looks like.
Yeah, I think this could be a group answer.
Okay.
But I first just want to say, like, guys, I adore you. You guys do amazing work. And I like it was a little uncomfortable. I'm gonna be honest, it was a little uncomfortable sitting here and listening to you guys answer the question because I'm like, oh, they're talking about me. What? Like that's not like so I just want to say thank you. I like that really just puts everything in perspective and really like shows like how important it is to stay true to our values and our mission within the company and like how it is actually playing out in day to day between the two of you and the rest of my staff. I mean, they're a reflection of the other team, right? The rest of the team. So I just want to say thank you. I adore you. But as far as supervision goes, so we do a combination. We have group supervision every morning. That is actually a combination of the lead RBTs and RBTs that are on the floor. So it's not so it can get a little complicated on how we dock that, right? But that is something that happens every morning. We have a team meeting before any of the kids come in. We talk about different things. We have like a reflection time and those kinds of things. But then my leads, like they take turns being on the floor or being in the office with me. And during that time, we're talking about different programs or we're talking about different ABA kind of things. Sometimes there's a couple of leads that are off the floor that day. So then it becomes a group session. Other days we're strapped like low on staff. So then it's just the two of us. So that's really like that's the easy way to explain it. But then they also have access to like what I call like our clinic to-do list. And those are different assignments or different tasks that they can do that count for unrestricted hours that they don't have to have direct contact with me.
I love that. I'll let both of you guys add to that, but I want to kind of add to the question too and just see kind of what has surprised you most during your supervision or practicum experience. And it doesn't necessarily have to be specific to Barrett Academy. It can be more just about the BACB requirements or your experience with Barrett Academy. So tell us a little bit more about what your supervision looks like and what has surprised you.
Um, oh, on top of what Alecia said, I'm trying to think. I feel like you covered that pretty wholly on what supervision looks like here, but I think the thing that surprised me the most, and actually it wouldn't even be here, the surprising thing, it would be the location where I met Alecia. I think it kind of all wraps around to how difficult it is to get those unrestricted hours. This was a school-based location specializing in autism services. And Alecia was the on-call BCBA, I guess. She wasn't there too often. But, you think that in your head when you're first starting the program, working directly with the kids, working through the behaviors, understanding the behaviors would be part of unrestricted. But in this specific instance, it wasn't. It was all restricted hours. And then I was very shocked when I came here and was way over the top in restricted hours and had barely any unrestricted. So I needed to work heavily on skewing them back to that 60-40 that I needed to finish my hours, which we finally did. So
Yay, congrats. I didn't realize
Thank
your
you.
hours are finished. That's a huge
Both
accomplishment.
Adrianna and I have finished our hours. So
Okay, so you guys are
very
just
exciting.
waiting to take that exam. Very exciting.
Yes.
Okay. Adriana, what was surprising to you?
So for my experience, because I was able to, and I mean, I know Amy had two different locations, but I had three different locations to kind of compare. And the most surprising thing for me is misinformation from BCBAs. It's completely shocking to me how many instances I ran into where the BCBA either gave me incorrect information as to what counts for what hours or didn't know what forms needed to be completed. And then also, when there were issues, wouldn't provide any support to then rectify that and support through that. So I think that the most important thing about Alecia is that she supports you through every step of the way. There's never going to be a time where you're like, I don't even know what to do. I mean, and if you are in that position, she'll be right there next to you going, we're going to figure it out. So that's the thing that really sets Alecia apart from the other BCBAs that I have come in contact with my supervision, is that
Mm.
she ensures that she has the competency that she needs to then guide us. And I think that that is the most surprising thing in the field, that we have some sort of discrepancy with that they aren't, that not all BCBAs are coming out at the same level as Alecia. And and for me that likes consistency, that's very upsetting and frustrating.
Absolutely. And I think that is another excellent point to bring up, just for listeners that who knows where they're working and who their supervisor is. People need to realize also that the BCB has made so many changes to supervision over the years. So depending on when your supervisor was certified and depending how up to date they're staying, it is just so important when logging those hours that people go to back to the BACB. Even if your supervisor says it, go fact check them. Make sure that this is the right form and there hasn't been an updated one. Because I see people all the time, asking for advice on Facebook groups and different things. And I know people just want to help each other, but that can really, really hurt somebody if they waste 6 months or 12 months doing something and then all of a sudden it doesn't count. So, very good point that you brought up there. Okay.
Amy, I would like to add just real quick onto that because I think that's a really important thing to like hone in on. Like it is the BACB's responsibility to keep everything up to date, right? But when we're supervising as a BCBA, a trainee, it's both parties' responsibility to know the updates. And if you're a trainee, like advocate for yourself. That's part of the process, right? It is hard as a BCBA to keep up on all the things. So we might miss something and we're not doing it intentionally. But like, work together to find that answer. um I find it sometimes BCBAs can be like, we're supposed to know all the things all the time and we get up on our little high horse, right? And it's like, no, be humble. Like it's okay that you don't know, go find out the answer, right? So I just wanted to kind of piggyback up on you and say, like, it's both parties' responsibility to know the rules. So don't just take the word of someone that is supervising you. Like, yes, trust them. You want to trust the person that's supervising you, but also look at the other resources that you have available. Okay, I'll get off my high horse now.
Absolutely.
Or soapbox, whichever one you want to call it.
Yes. So I want to talk about what makes Barrett Academy different. And I want to, this first one, since Adriana and Amy have both worked at several different places, and then Amy with your Bowling Green colleagues or other students that I'm sure you've talked with, how do you feel like what sets Barrett Academy apart from other ABA organizations, and not just within supervision? It could be about the way you all provide services, culture, anything like that.
So I don't have a ton to compare her to, outside of the one other ABA clinic that I've worked in, and I was only there for a short period of
Mhm.
time. I've not been able to see. I've heard a lot about other clinics in the area, but I think from what I've heard and what I know about Alecia, I think the biggest difference between her company and others is her commitment to providing client-centered and individualized treatment to each child. So there is no across the board anything for these other than like probably don't let your kids have your phone or whatever. Like, you don't want them to have that. Or some other like little small rules, like company-wide rules. Everything else is like tailored specifically to each child and in a very natural way. And I can really appreciate that. We see a lot of growth in our kiddos this way. And I think that is because that's her approach.
I love that. Adriana, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so I do think that in a lot of other clinics, we let you know, I've observed them letting skill acquisition and improvements on that next report and things like that drive what the BCBA is planning and how they're pushing and what goals they're doing. And I think that that is the crucial part that is set apart from us because we don't like Amy was saying, everything is personalized to the client. This is a struggle that this client is having. It affects their life very badly, and we need to make a change that will make it better for them. Nothing is just, oh, well, this is what society expects, so this is what we need to work on. It's what fits for that kid and is most socially valid. But then we also just, we implement it in the most natural way possible. So when you walk through and therapy is taking place, it looks like everyone is just playing, having fun, and it does not feel like they're being pushed to work, but they are. They're doing the work in a fun way so that they get to have that childhood because like I think that the field definitely forgets that, these are small children. They still deserve to have a childhood, and by them being in our clinics, they're missing out on their daycare like experience that they would have. So they deserve that. And, I think that I think that here we really have a very good balance of getting that progress while also meeting their needs and, meeting it meaningfully and socially having social validity in those goals.
Absolutely. So, Alecia, how do you intentionally build and protect this culture that you have?
Mhm. Yeah, it's embedded throughout the day inherently. Like we don't there's not room to stray from it, right? Like we really like every day we have a meeting before, talk about updates, talk about client progress. We do a morning reflection of like positive and positive moments and our difficult moments and finding the trends within that and how can we address that. Um, but it's really all about like establishing that initial culture when you bring on someone new to the team, right? This is what the expectations are here. In that like we're going to interact with the child like they're a child and like they're a human being and build their skills from where they are to where they need to be the most successful that they can be in their life. Focusing mostly on safe initially, right? When they first start is safety and functional communication. Like, and that is going to look different from each child to each child. And so we really embed this open communication, this open support system, and really we have like open like play zones. Each area has a different feel, has a different like lists of different activities that we can do. Of course, we can stray from those activities, like, but to help staff kind of still stay centered and not have to think too much on their feet, because natural environment teaching is there's a lot of mental capacity that has to happen during that, right? And it's hard, it's hard work. So we have worked to continue to add those supports in the environment, not only for the clients but for the staff to be their most successful staff, most successful in their day.
Absolutely. Love that. So now I want to talk a little bit more about their practicum experience, and especially since I know your hours are all completed now. So, what part of the practicum experience has been the most valuable, would you say, now that you're studying for that exam?
Um, I mean, there's so many things. But one thing that we learned about pretty early on in the education process was cultural competency, really understanding the different various backgrounds of our children and how that can impact not only our services, but what the family needs.
Mhm.
I think that is a very crucial part to our job. We do have a lot of children from so many different religious and cultural backgrounds, and it's very important to me, and I know it's also very important to Alecia to make sure we're not only respecting those, but incorporating that within our practices as needed. We have an individual who's bilingual, and I started learning some Spanish just so that I could kind of communicate with her on both levels. So um, I I think that that is really important to us.
Absolutely. Adriana?
One of the most valuable aspects of my practicum experience is um, the at my second placement, there was a high intensity expectation for fluency. And it really, really helped me to think on my feet.
Hmm.
And that piece of it was very, very helpful. It was very stressful, don't get me wrong. I definitely burned out, but um, it was very helpful for the fluency. And so then once I transitioned from there to Alecia, and she does a lot of like, she allows you the autonomy to make the choice or try to process the situation and come up with what you're going to do and either process it prior to doing it or process it afterwards. And she like creates intentional opportunities for us to have that independence and actually practice what it's like to be a BCBA. So I think that that fluency was very, very helpful for me prior to switching. And then the switch was like the next ultimate step I needed, which was to give me that autonomy to practice as a BCBA and still feel like, she's got my back and she's there to support me if there's anything I'm not sure about, but also trusting in my skill. Because as part of this process is realizing that eventually it's going to be my call. And
Hmm.
so,
Absolutely.
preparing for that. And that I think is what is so valuable from Alecia is that she allows you to grow as a leader and not just function underneath her.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's awesome.
That goes hand in hand with my next question. I was going to ask you all if you could maybe be vulnerable for a minute and share a moment during supervision that challenged you and helped you grow. I can certainly remember, and even as a BCBA, there's times where that imposter syndrome, creeps in and we don't feel like we're quite ready. But if we never try, we're never going to be able to stand on our own and make those decisions like you just said. So, don't know if each of you can maybe think of a moment that kind of challenged you and helped you grow.
I distinctly remember a staff training day where where we played Jeopardy with questions that you likely would see on an exam. And I shut down rapidly. There were like 2, 3 questions in a row where I was like, "Oh, I know the answer," and then proceeded to get it wrong. And like you said, that imposter syndrome definitely really hit,
Mhm.
and I was just so distraught and so upset. I was like, I'm never going to pass this exam. I don't know any of these answers. Am I even in the right job? And luckily, Adrianna and Alecia were there to be like, hey, just so you know, your only issue here is like the verbiage of things. You know how to act this stuff out on the floor. It's just the definitions of everything and like the very technical clinical stuff is where I was getting tripped up at. But like acting it out and performing it and doing my job in the moment was not something I was struggling with. It was everything else. So Alecia definitely helped me work through that and gain some confidence in that area so that I feel a bit better going into the test.
Very relatable. So thanks for sharing that, Amy. There's plenty of other people out there in the same situation. So.
So something that I can remember is, so I tend to get my emotions are very big And so sometimes my emotions can be triggered, and I have to figure out how to address that in the most professional manner. There was a day where a staff and I had an interaction, and it just didn't go exactly as I expected. And I felt myself like wanting to be very, very upset and just shut down. And I was like, no, you need to go to Alecia, process, figure out how we fix this, not let it break you down. And so that was the biggest thing is I went to her and I'm like, this is what was said, and this is how I feel, and I think this is what I'm supposed to do, and I don't really know which one is right. And she just kind of helped me process through each one and was like, you have to trust yourself, and even when you feel that squeeze in your stomach where you're like, oh, is that wrong? Should I not say that? Should I have done it this way? You got to take a breath, refocus, and trust that you know what you're talking about. And it was kind of very interesting because after that, we had that talk. The next day, it was almost like perfect. An example opened in an open forum where it was like the same kind of interaction, and I needed to respond in the way that we had just discussed. And I like froze for a second, and she sat next to me, and she just like tapped over, and she's like, "Go ahead." And and she gave me that nudge of like, you got this. And that was so helpful for me. And that was like such a big challenge that like really opened my eyes to like recognizing that I can handle some of this.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both for just being vulnerable and sharing those moments. And Adriana, I mean, our field, it is the there is a level of emotional exhaustion, I think. And with HIPAA, we can't go home and, talk to our partner or friends or whoever about our day. So being able to have that supervisor or mentor where you can have a safe place to, not only regulate those emotions, but process those emotions and talk and learn through those things is just crucial because you can definitely have emotional burnout if it's just all in there. So thank you all for sharing both of that. I want to focus on Alecia. So when designing supervision experiences, what do you prioritize most for future BCBAs?
I'm hopeful that you're kind of seeing a thread here in that like I meet my supervisees where they are like either in their skill set or their need right then and there, right? So I really focus in on, okay, where are you? What do you need? How can we meet that need? And then how can we continue to take steps forward in your growth? And, I don't always know all the answers. I don't always have all the right things to say. But at the end of the day, like we're growing together and, it's all about that. But then beyond that, I focus in on client care first. Like, let's learn how do we address the client? How do we write programs? How do we see the progress in the programs? How do we then make changes in the programs? We get that solid, like interpersonal relationships going, client care going, and then we step back to the back door and we start looking at all the clinical documents and we start working on there. And then we got that. And then we start working on, okay, now let's dive deeper into like, how can we process these questions that you might see on the exam? I'm not a term person. I don't pretend to be. I don't throw out terms. That is an area of growth for our team, right? Is because that is a little bit of a space that is lacking for my supervisees, that like we don't throw around terms and during supervision. So therefore, it's more on their time to learn to become more familiar on those terms. But then once we get to the questions, it's like, okay, no, process through that question, pick out the key words, the key terms, like what is it that you need to focus in on? Oh, wait, read that last statement again and then try and answer, right? So it's like more about the process instead of actually teaching at that space.
Wonderful. Very thoughtful. Thank you so much for sharing all that. Okay, we're going to take a little pivot to technology. So, Hi Rasmus is an ABA clinical platform, and our whole purpose is to help support the people that help children with autism so that we can make it easier to provide services and they can focus on the child in front of them. And Barrett Academy does use Hi Rasmus. So, I want to ask each of you what your favorite feature on Hi Rasmus is and how does that matter to you in your day-to-day work? And whoever wants to go first can.
So Alecia has given us all little bits, little spaces, soon to be BCBAs. And my specific one is Hierasmus. So if somebody needs something changed in there, or there needs to, that prompt hierarchy isn't working right. Can you fix that? That usually goes to me. But that also means that I have the access to be able to, like, in a session, say a new behavior shows up or something that I am like, I need to be counting that. That's a new thing. We need to be, so-and-so is going to want to know about this. I'm able to mid-session, while the session is running, go into this client and add a new goal, add a new target. I don't have to end the session, leave the session, do any of that. I can do that right there, right then and there. And so that helps kind of with the fluency of taking data, especially if, like I said, it's something we've not seen before, and we want to make sure that we're logging that information so that we can come back to it later and be like, what's going on here? So I do really like that feature, although I like a lot of the features on Hierasmus. So
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
So my favorite feature is the ABC data that is added at the top. That I like it because it allows a streamline of information. Because, like Amy was saying, a lot of the times we will see a new behavior, and I find myself wanting to, like, go to one of the other lead RBTs or Alecia and be like, hey, this new thing happened. Oh my God, it's so, I can't believe that this is happening. We could do this, 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 and this. And my mind just starts reeling. And so I think that the ABC data is really helpful for me to remember that word of mouth data is not as effective, and it is not going to help in the moment, because if I go tell somebody, then I'm not paying attention to my kid and all those things. So I really like that the ABC data allows me to put in, we have like preset things that you can click that are known behaviors for the client, but then you can also type in something new that you've seen and how you saw it, and the, what happened before it, during it, after, so that we can see a good picture, a good, shot of it just from that one time that it happened. So I think that that is really, really helpful to make sure that we are highly responsive and individualizing our programs, because we can capture that data right then and there and not have to leave the session or anything like that. I also really like that we can open our notes and start writing the notes during the day to also ensure that we have, high quality notes, to make sure that they are, because memory is not always trustworthy. And so I think that that is a really good feature to allow for good high quality data and documentation.
Wonderful.
I would second all of that and add and add like the visibility, the how the system looks, like the appeal of it is really nice visually, and like navigating it is really easy on both the BCBA side and the RBT side. And I think that is like so important, because if it's not easy to navigate, if it's not easy to train or teach, then there's a more of a response cost on the staff side, and it becomes frustrating and overwhelming, and then it starts to bog down the systems, right? So I really like that it is so visually appealing and easy to navigate. But on the BCBA side, I really like the customability of the forms and the documents. Being able to create literally any like any layout. Well, I shouldn't say any, when
Mhm.
they're, but like you can put in a lot of different things and make it look a lot of different ways. And you can add any create a lot of different dynamic fields, so it automatically pulls into the reports, which saves a ton of time when you're doing when you're doing a reauth, which I mean is amazing for especially the system that we had, like the non-data collection system that we had before we did Erasmus. The the clinical documents are much better.
Love it. Awesome. Well, we like to close each episode by reflecting on our slogan, focus on the child in front of you. So we like to ask our guest a little bit differently to think about the children closest to you. So whether you have children of your own, nieces, nephews, neighbors, if the closest children to you are your clients, that's fine as well. But during this busy time of Alecia running a business and Amy and Adriana um, exam prep and studying and working and all the things, how do you stay focused on the child in front of you? And I'll let you take it.
So I do have a 4-year-old daughter.
Oh,
Um, and I'm a single mother, so getting through the master's program and working through the supervision and studying for the exam has been tricky, but I
mhm,
have been lucky enough to have built a really strong community.
mhm.
Alecia allows me, if like her daycare is closed or if XYZ is happening, she allows me to bring her in with me. So that I can still maintain focus on her and on my work. And she kind of just like flits around and does whatever, and she's fine. But when it came to schooling, um, I also, this sounds horrible, I also didn't have Wi-Fi and it was all online schooling.
Mhm.
And so I relied heavily on the local library, and the librarians would play with my daughter while I did some schoolwork, or I would take her to the local Big B. And they had a staff member there who would throw on a movie and give her a cup of whipped cream and sprinkles and let her eat it while I took a test or whatever. So I think just really building the community of friends and social things around me has helped to ensure that I can focus on make sure that my daughter is okay, but that I'm also progressing my life forward to make her life better in the future.
I love that so much, Amy. Not only are you helping your daughter, but I can tell you, you are inspiring and encouraging others around you and the other people listening. So thanks for sharing
Thank
that.
you.
Um, so I don't have any kids. So for me, it would be the kids that I work with. And I am very, very passionate about my life ends at the door. If I am on a kid today, that they are my sole care throughout that whole session until the session is over. Um, Now, I'm not saying I don't ever get distracted because that would be unrealistic and not human. I do, it's easy to get distracted by life things, but I try to make it known to everyone around me, my family members and stuff like that. They know when I'm at work, it's likely you're not going to get a response from me if I'm on a kid. If I'm not on a kid, yes, I can be more, available to, if there's
Mhm.
an emergency or something. But, I just really try when I'm doing ABA therapy to completely shut off anything that is personally going on in my life and just focus on what are we doing in the here and now. Because that also once they realize that you're there with them in that moment, then the engagement can flow. When they notice that you're, checking your phone or not really, or like looking around the room or anything like that, they notice and they aren't going to want to play with you. And if you aren't playing, then you're not learning. So, I do definitely hold that really high to try and keep my focus. But with school, when I was in school, it was definitely a lot harder. Burnout was a lot higher. I was at a more corporate ABA center where the expectation was very high. If I had been with Alecia the whole time, I don't think it would have been as hard. But But yeah, I try very hard to hold the boundaries as well as do my own self-care when I'm not here to
Mm.
ensure that I can show up for them.
I love that, Adriana. So important to have that intentional focus and just giving it your all when that child is in front of you, because that's someone's baby. And those parents, just appreciate you and all that you do so much. So thanks for sharing that. I'll let Alecia uh, answer.
Yeah, I mean, I wear a lot of hats. So sometimes it is hard to take one hat off and put the other one on and back and flip back and forth. Um, but I try really hard to be intentional on what task am I working on right here, right now. Um, uh, so I have written to-do lists, I have a list for the team, I have like those kinds of things. And if I don't have those lists, then I am definitely more mentally chaotic, which then pulls me away from who's in front of me, whether that's my personal children, the children here, or the staff that I am, charged to supervise and take care of
Mhm.
and grow, right? So for me, it's putting in those systems to help pull out what is swirling around in my head, um, that I can reference later. So I'm not swirling and also trying to pay attention to you. I think that's my biggest personal thing. Yeah. Putting those
Absolutely.
systems in place is important.
Crucial. Yes, all such great answers. Well, thank you so much, Alecia, Adriana, and Amy, for sharing your story and your perspectives on building future behavior analysts with intention and heart. It's inspiring to hear how a bootstrapped organization can make such a meaningful impact through strong supervision, thoughtful training, and a child-centered focus. Thank you all for listening to Hierasmus and Friends, and thank you all so much for being here. Bye.
Thanks for joining us on Hierasmus and Friends, Stories Behind the Science. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to share inspiring stories and foster empowerment within the autism community. See you next time. Thanks for joining us on Hi Rasmus and Friends, Stories Behind the Science. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to our podcast and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us continue to share inspiring stories and foster empowerment within the autism community. See you next time.